Hello guys, my name is Anna and I vlog daily from Ukraine since the start of brutal Russian invasion. So if you want to know more about real life in my country during these challenging times and you support Ukraine, please subscribe. This is the easiest way to demonstrate your solidarity and spread information about Ukrainian victories and Russian war crimes. And today I want to speak about one really complicated, controversial topic. These are future elections, both in my country, Ukraine, and in Orkland, because there is no other name for Russia terrorist state. I will not speak about the future US elections because I believe you have to speak only about the spheres in which you have knowledge and some experience, or at least this is your territory. But of course, as a Ukrainian, I follow very attentively all the updates, and I am so worried for us not to lose your support because Russia expects the world to get tired with Ukraine, things to change with following elections in the US and in many European countries, and that they will win not with strength, not with tactics or strategies or weapons or innovations, but with people that can outnumber us. They are ready to sacrifice, they are ready to wait. Don't let them do so. But today, let's focus on two elections that are coming, one in Ukraine and second one in Russia. Though I think it's impossible to name elections in Russia elections, as this is an oxymoron. They don't have elections. And it is not just Putin who started this tradition. Since Soviet times, they liked keeping leaders for decades. This is actually a feature of many societies that prefer authoritarian, totalitarian regimes. In Belarus, Lukashenko is a president, a so-called president for 28 years. In Russia, Putin is also a leader of the country for decades. He had a short break when crazy Medvedev, drunk Medvedev, addict Medvedev was president and he was a prime minister, but we all understand it was just a substitution, a game or something like that. Honestly, I believe it's very tragic to understand that many Russian soldiers now dead in the trenches were born, went to school, graduated, maybe even married, and then were mobilized, came to Ukraine and died here with just one president. Think about that. Can you imagine it in your countries that all of your lifetime you have just one president? This is crazy. Even if he was the best person, if he was, Churchill or your favorite person on the world, it's not okay to be a leader of the country for decades because something happens even to the best of us. I think this rotation is always good. And even for super ambitious people, there are other positions that you can try and get. So they are getting ready for elections in 2024. And one of the greatest troubles to find candidates not younger than 50 years old. Why? Everything is under control in Russia, but they don't want their population to like anyone. That's why they think that even among the prepared candidates, those who are not real candidates, those who will simply register to make an illusion of competition, they need people older than 50 because that might make Putin look old. And I've read an article where they were looking for these candidates. They have 2 or 3 people who can register. One is traditionally the leader of the Communist Party, and 2 others, I don't remember in particular, but their chances is 2%, 1%, and not many are eager. And there is one man who is eager. He now tries to become a mayor of Moscow. And he's, I cannot say good speaker because he's an orc, I'm sorry. But he's active on public, but he's 39 and he is denied even to be a fake candidate because it can demonstrate that Putin is getting older and can die eventually one day. Honestly, if you agree that the place of Putin is in The Hague, in prison, in camera, or hanging somewhere on a really high tree and you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe and share the videos that you consider important, because we still have to win this war. So now they are actively looking for older candidates, not to demonstrate that Putin is actually getting older. And for many Russians, there is a problem. They are afraid he might lose the grasp and his strong arm because of getting older. So they are not looking for freedom, more space, less authoritarian style of leading a country, but they are actually worried he's not going to be that aggressive with age. And according to the leaks present in various sources, they expect 70% of people to show up on these elections that are not actually elections, and more than 80% will support dictator Putin, because he needs this really high results to prove the world and to prove his population that despite his losses and failure of Blitzkrieg, he is still the greatest leader of all times, just like Stalin. Just think about what heroes they are choosing for themselves. Hitler is now a prohibited figure everywhere. You will not see his portrait. Stalin is responsible for millions of innocent victims, and he is a hero of modern Russia and their president. So, I believe that this next elections, Putin must meet somewhere in The Hague looking for his bunk bed, but so far he is getting ready to fake another round of these elections, but people support him. Another very problematic question, and I see that Russian narrative tries to pervert and manipulate this thing, are future elections in Ukraine. According to our election calendar, we are supposed to have elections in spring 2024. But it's not very likely they will take place. And I know that lots of people in global politics, especially in the US, try saying that, oh my God, then Zelensky is just the same dictator as Putin. Let me clarify something and then ask you questions. Maybe then you will either give me answers and persuade me that I'm wrong, or you will see my point. Well, first of all, it's Zelensky's first term, not like 20 plus years as Putin did. So, like, Zelensky is much younger, you know. But these are funny arguments. Let's take into account some serious ones. During wartime, according to Ukrainian constitution and all laws, including the election law, it is impossible to conduct elections. It was always like that, not during time of Zelensky, and maybe if you Google and read the legislation of your own countries and your own constitutions, you will see that during war times, when this martial law exists, people are not allowed to do a number of things, and elections are actually a part of these things. This is actually one of the reasons why in 2014, when Russia first invaded Ukraine, our president and our government did not name it war, but used terms like anti-terroristic operation or other things. Many in Ukraine did not like it and wanted war to be named war, but if you name it war, you have to proclaim martial law, wartime, and there are lots of limitations like traveling abroad, mobilization, and no elections. So this is not the inventions of Zelensky, and check in your countries, it might be something very similar. Then another very, very, very simple question. How do you conduct these elections? You know that as an American Senator, Lindsey Graham, if I'm not mistaken, Graham said that Ukraine has to demonstrate the world that it has changed and it is not a corrupt country, it's honest and free, and with free and honest elections. I totally support this idea, but the question is, how do you organize these elections? First, on a really large territory of Ukraine that is occupied, and lots of our people are under occupation. Then a huge territory of Ukraine is a real hot war zone with no infrastructure, I mean no electricity, no internet, no normal mobile phones, not saying like missiles and artillery are flying all the time. How do you organize the election process with election booths, with campaigns, with agitation? Also, you know that Russians like to ruin various events in Ukraine. So I imagine that on election days, we will have like 100 or 1,000 air raid alarms. And then a question: when you have air raid alert, should you leave the building when the voting takes place? So there are questions: how do you organize this process? Forget about the territories that are temporarily occupied together with its people, but it's not just. And come on, then, okay, millions of Ukrainians are abroad, but this is more or less solvable question. But what about those who are on temporarily occupied territories or lost like all of their documents or are not identified? And how do you organize the very process? I mean, papers, locations, booths, transportations, logistics. What about soldiers? How do they vote? Like, wait, not should. I have to vote. Another thing is that for any election to be truly democratic, different from the Russian one, you have to invite lots and lots and lots of international observers. Since university, I worked as an interpreter for a number of OSCE observers, and they are always present. They ride around the country, stop, they have questionnaires, they observe whether this process is legitimate, if the president or administration, for example, is not overusing their powers. So this very simple question is, how do you organize this process? I mean, how do you give all people of Ukraine an opportunity to vote? How do you protect them during this voting? How do you protect the results? I mean, physically, because they can be bombed and burned. How do you protect all the servers from hackers' attack? But in general, how do you guarantee safety to all the people who can come and vote? And if you cannot guarantee and like 20% will show up, what's the sense? Then how many international observers will come? And from what I know, Zelensky approximately counted, it will take, I don't like how it sounds, it's not Zelensky counted, like it's approximately $5 billion that you have to spend to organize a more or less safe and realistic process of election. So honestly, I believe that like Zelensky is not the kind of a person who will grab this power and stay in Ukraine forever. Ukraine is not the country where you can do it. But honestly, as an ordinary citizen, I do not see how you can organize this process realistically and safely, even in my city that is far away from the front zone. I think it's almost impossible in like 1/3 of Ukraine. So my question is, if we do want to demonstrate that we are a free, democratic country, that we try to break up with all corrupt mechanisms, though I don't understand what is the correction between real war and the process of voting here and corruption. So this question, how can we organize the process of elections if we will not win the war by that time? The best way to make these elections is actually to win the war, and then of course very quickly everything will be transparently organized, and I'm sure the world will see that Ukrainians are free people. And by the way, I don't know who will be the next president. Maybe Zelensky, maybe not, because there are always presidents of war, presidents of peace. We'll see. But at this moment, if you have any idea how this can be organized, please let me know in the comments so I can start thinking on that. Anyway, I hope I did not tire you. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and share the information that you consider interesting, because the world needs to know more about Ukraine. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons. I value that a lot. Introduce yourself to our merch. The link is below this video, same as the links to all of my profiles on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Discord. I share different kind of materials there, and I'm always glad to hear from you. Thank you so much for being friends, and Slava Ukraini!